Nearly ready.
Is it too late to get her? Oh.
Try and get her on the way out. Keep an eye on her. She's sitting in there. We're about to kick off. I doubt it. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're all very welcome to the Virginia Show Centre this morning. The Irish Men's Sheds Association Conference and Shedfest is about to kick off in about 5 minutes' time. So we'd ask you, if you could, to make your way towards the centre of the hall to the seated area. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, this event is going out live to Ireland and the world. It's streaming on the Irish Men's Shed YouTube channel and on menssheds.ie. And if you're sharing anything from today, please use the hashtag Shedfest23. Thank you.
plan was we were going to sit up here and watch there, and then so I want to bring you come over here.
What's your man there? What's the other people? No. Other fellow. Again. Carmen. I can't think of it. He was very good. Maybe he's a senator.
Oh yeah, no butter. Fantastic. Yeah, close to that. Yeah. I take position here.
Right, thanks. See you, Michael. Now.
Good morning, everybody. How are you? It's absolutely fantastic to see you, to see such a great crowd, of course, and of course all the displays that many of you have brought with you, which is fantastic as well. It's nice to be in a part of the world that's not actually raining at the moment, although I suspect it's going to be before long. But yesterday I was at an event down in Castlebar, and it absolutely belted rain all the way from Dublin down to Castlebar, as it does in the west, as you know, probably yourselves anyway. And then this morning coming back, the weather in the west was again poor, so you're getting a kind of a lucky break. but at least we're indoors. The idea of the thing yesterday was, it's one of them, I suppose, about hosting any events, no matter how important they are, at this time of the year, in November or December or whatever. And what the good people of Castlebar were doing was they were putting a defibrillator on the side of the road near the new bypass in Castlebar. And this was just in case anybody had a medical emergency, that there was a defibrillator available, and they're putting a big effort in County Mayo and hoping to spread it beyond that, to have things like this available on roadsides. Sometimes you get them in a centre like this or in a GEA club or whatever the case is, but by and large, they're not broadly available out in the wider community. So that was the idea of what we were doing yesterday. The only problem about it was that there was a photo shoot at the end of it. And as I said, because it was raining in Castlebar, it was one of those things, you're standing on the side of the road, and like a lot of professional photographers, with all due respect to one or two who's here with us here today, they want to get the shot right. Of course they do, you know. And you're standing there in the rain, and you're thinking to yourself, this is very important. Let's be patient here. This is a very good initiative, and fair play to the people of Castlebar. Now, would you just take the friggin' photograph and let's get out of here? But anyway, as I said, fantastic to see you all here. Thank you so much for being with us. We have a couple of speakers. I hope you're going to find them interesting. I think that you will. Would you welcome first, please, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see here on my left-hand side, and welcome to this national conference, the Minister for Rural and Community Development, Heather Humphreys, TD. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, and good morning, everyone. And I'm delighted to be joined here this morning by local councillors Winston Bennett, Trevor Smith and TP Riley. Thanks for being here, because I know you're busy men. And to the CEO of the Irish Men's Sheds Association, Enda Egan, distinguished guests, and can I just say a very special welcome to all our shredders. And I'm delighted that you're here in my own constituency of Cavan and Monaghan, in this wonderful centre here on the Virginia showgrounds. So can I first of all say that I'm delighted to be addressing your first ever national conference and Shedfest. And to the ladies that made and served the tea, I want to say a huge thank you. Now, those scones with the jam and cream were to die for. But now somebody said to me, you know, all the men here, and it's the women that's serving the tea, but I have to say, when I go to the men's sheds, the men make the tea, and they're very good at it. So there you go. I understand that there are some 210 shedders who are here today, who have registered for the event. And I know that you have a very busy schedule, and you're going to hear from a number of guest speakers. So I have no doubt you will have a wonderful and jam-packed day, and it really is a great privilege for me as Minister for Rural and Community Development to officially open your conference, because I think by now you know that I'm a big fan of the men's and the women's sheds. Our men's sheds are very much part of a national movement that is making such a positive difference in communities, the length and breadth of this country. Because what you do is you provide a safe, inclusive and welcoming place for men of all ages to come together, to socialise, to work on various projects, or to just have a bit of company and have that chat with one another. And my goodness me, you work on projects. What a wonderful display of projects this morning. It crosses so many different areas, and it really is a credit to you. And it'll do your heart good now to go around and see all the wonderful pieces of art and of practical implements. And I think of a good of putting you put the the handles back in gardening equipment there. I see some really good repair work done. So it ranges across art and crafts and everything. And it is a credit to you. And I know that you take wonderful pride in your work. And I know there's a bit of competition between some of the men's sheds as well. We're heading into the winter months now, and the days are shorter and the evenings are getting darker much, much earlier. So the service that you provide in the men's sheds are particularly invaluable at this time of year when isolation and loneliness can kick in. As you know, in my role as Minister for Rural and Community Development, it does allow me to get out and about and all over the country to visit towns and villages right across rural Ireland. And I can tell you one thing, the contribution that our men's sheds are making in their communities is second to none. Just like our Tidy Towns volunteers, you're a credit to your communities and you very much keep the show on the road. And I know that you do so with the support and guidance of the Irish Men's Sheds Association under your CEO, Enda Egan. And I think it's incredibly impressive that there are some 435 men's sheds registered with the Irish Men's Sheds Association. Some are bigger and are more active than others, but all 435 men's sheds, they are special and they're very unique in their own way. So you might remember last year, Enda, I visited the Dublin 12 men's shed in Kimmage. I had a great day out there as well. And you remember too that I did bring some good news, and I was in a position to announce 800,000 in funding for our men's shed. So I did that last year. Well, I don't think it'd be fair for you all to come all the way up here to this wonderful centre in Virginia early on a Monday morning and listen to me without me bringing you a wee bit of more good news. So I'm absolutely delighted this morning to announce €1 million in funding. Well, thank you. And do you know what it is? It is money well spent, because that's going to see some 435 men's sheds supported with grants of up to €3,000. And that money can be paid, to pay your heating or your electricity bills, or maybe carry out some small bit of repairs that you need done to the premises. Can I just say that I'll have to give the men in Belturbet a shout out, because Michael there, he got on to me when I was the minister, appointed first as minister, and he said to me, Heather, he says, you'll have to come down and see what we're doing in Belturbet. And they brought me in, and they had Enda there as well, and they outlined all the wonderful work. So the men's shed in Belturbet, I have to say, they kicked the ball in and I picked it up. So now, you know, I wear two ministerial hats because I'm also the Minister for Social Protection. So I have a bit of other good news today as well, so I might as well tell you when I'm here, because this morning I approved the payment of 3 different cost of living lump sum supports that really will help hundreds of thousands of households nationwide. So from today, a €300 fuel allowance lump sum will be paid to 409,000 households. Between Wednesday and Friday of this week, a €400 disability grant will be paid to 214,000 people with disabilities, and this includes disability allowance, the invalidity pension and the blind pension. And finally then on Thursday, a €400 lump sum working family payment will be paid to 45,000 families in respect of 97,000 children. So that means that just this week alone, my Department of Social Protection will be paying out €230 million in cost of living lump sums to families and households. And of course, and there's 6 more lump sum payments to follow between next week and the end of January. And that's all part of what was the largest social protection budget in the history of the state. And it underpins my commitment as Minister and this government's commitment to continue to support our pensioners, our carers, our people with disabilities and working families. But back to today's event, I really do want to thank each and every Men's Shed for your work, your dedication, and for playing such a key role in each community where you live. You've rallied to support your members across the country, and this inclusive approach is what keeps communities across Ireland together. Your community spirit, your positive attitude is clear to see and is something that I have had the pleasure of experiencing in many towns and villages all over the country in the past few years. And if I get time at all, I always like to drop in to see the men's sheds when I'm visiting an area. I really would like to express my appreciation for the tremendous work of the Irish Men's Sheds Association and all the men's and women's sheds throughout Ireland. And as I say, don't forget about the grants. Get the word out now. Each shed is entitled to a grant of up to €3,000. And Enda and his team at the IMSA will provide you with all the support and all the guidance you need to draw down the money. And finally, I really would like to thank Enda on behalf of your association for inviting me here today. And I want to thank Enda for all the wonderful work he does, because I know he supports you. Yeah, in his own quiet way, and he's there, and he's there when you need him, and he's done a lot of work in building capacity within the organisation. So I really want to wish you every success in the work you're undertaking, all the very, very best for the future. Have a great Shedfest, and I look forward to visiting more of your sheds soon. Goramila Mahagiv Golair.
Minister, thank you very much indeed. I think, folks, it's always great to see the Minister attending events like this, but when she comes along with a shed load of money, that's even better again, isn't it? I brought this up here onto the podium with me just to explain it to you as to why I'm hobbling around on one of these things at the moment. A couple of weeks ago, I did a very simple thing, but like I'm inclined to do sometimes in my life, a very stupid thing. I was going into the Super Value down the road from where I live in Cabinteely in Dublin, and getting out of the car and just simply getting a shopping bag out of the boot. I kind of lost my concentration. Somebody blew a horn or did something going past or whatever, and I just lost my concentration for a second and tripped over the footpath and fractured my hip. It's not the worst thing that can happen to you in life. The other thing about it is I also strained a groin muscle. That's giving me a little bit of jip here at the moment. But the plus side of it is, anybody who sees you, I was on 2 of these actually for about 3 or 4 weeks, and people are very good. Going in and out of places, people will come up to you and say, can I give you a hand? Can I do something for you? Like coming out of a shop one day, a young lady carried my shopping bag to the car and put it in the car for me and all that, and then drove off. But as I said, people are very kind, and I think what I'm going to do, and this is just a little bit of kind of support, if you like, for me. I think I'll keep this because there's value in it, trust me. He was mentioned to you, of course, ladies and gentlemen, a moment ago, and I'd like you to give a huge big welcome, of course, to your Chief Executive Officer of Men's Sheds, Enda Egan. Thank you very much indeed. Enda, please.
Thank you, Michael, and good morning to everybody, and you're very welcome here to our first national conference on Shedfest. And what a wonderful and brilliant location to have it in here in the show centre in Virginia. This has to be one of the most unique and amazing premises that you will find anywhere around the country in a small country town in a rural county. It's an amazing achievement for everybody involved. There's no doubt about that. And the extra little bit of tarmac out there is going to really finish the job off. the last time I met the minister, would you believe, was actually at the ploughing match, and it was spilling out of heavens, and I seen this lady coming down through the muck and water and any other word you want to use to describe it, and it turned out to be Minister Humphreys in blue Wellingtons and a blue coat, so I can confirm that blue is definitely her colour, that's for sure. But just to maybe reverse slightly back to 2 years ago, and the Minister did mention it there in her speech, and that was the first time that I met her over in the men's shed in Belturbet. And a couple of things happened that day. One was that you could see that the Minister had a real interest in the sheds and a real interest in what community organisations are doing and the value of community organisations, within the community, within the wider sector of life. And I think she had a real connection with what the men's shed were actually doing, and not just the workshop sort of stuff, but the whole social gathering and the fact that it brings men together, and the fact that, in rural and isolated areas, men's sheds play a huge role that probably no other organisation actually plays, so we're quite unique within that. And I think the Minister got that very, very quickly. Also, one of the best presentations that I've seen given in my 20-odd years working across organisations was given on that day by Michael in the bench shed in Belturbet, and I think that certainly gave the Minister a very clear indication of the value that sheds were given to society, but also the needs that sheds actually have. And there is a kind of a famous statement by Barack Obama where he says, money is not the only answer, but it does make a difference. And men's sheds can really, I think, relate to that. Money is not the only thing the sheds need, but it does make a difference. So this funding is going to make a massive difference on simple things. And that's what sheds are really all about, is the simple things. And the simple things here are actually keeping the lights turned on, keeping a bit of heat in the place, paying the insurance, being able to turn on and boil the kettle. And as everybody knows, you will find within men's sheds very expensive tools in workshops. And men often, as the Minister alluded to, sometimes there can be competition among some of the sheds. And very often they'll talk about, the very expensive DeWalt shoe tools or Makita or Milwaukee or whatever. But probably the most important tool in the shed, you'll probably buy it in Lidl for about $17.99, and that's the kettle. And most sheds might have 2 or 3 kettles. And that's really important because that's what brings the men in there. And one of our most important mottos is that there's a role for every man in the men's shed. So men's sheds are not just about, the workshops and the carpentry and the metalwork and all that stuff. It takes men to do the governance. It takes guys to come in and actually run the committees and keep the minutes of the meetings and ensure that we have, all the proper governance in sheds that's required. And it takes someone to turn on the kettle and put the water in the kettle, and there's a role for every man in a men's shed. And it's really important that we get that message out there because, since COVID, one of the key things is that, on an all-island basis, we had about 10,000 men per week attending sheds prior to COVID. That's now down to about 6,000. And the importance of that €3,000 per shed, and we've seen this with the previous grant that the Minister gives, it actually gives a renewed energy to the sheds. It gets guys coming back in because they know that they're actually safe and sustainable for the next 12 months. And €3,000 means that all these sheds will actually be open. They'll be open to bring in new men. As we say, men in the sheds range from 18 to 102. And that's the factual sort of figures. But we need more men to get involved. There's been loads of men prior to COVID, maybe as a result of COVID, their health has deteriorated. They no longer maybe have the enthusiasm for sheds. And we want to make a huge renewed effort to bring those guys back into the sheds and get sheds up and going again as they were doing beforehand. The really important thing about men's sheds is that, they're huge connectors within communities. They're huge enablers within communities. It's not just what goes on in the shed. You know, the Minister made a great announcement in the budget for Tidy Towns. A lot of the support work that goes on within Tidy Towns, the flower boxes, you know, the benches, the bird boxes, the bat boxes, most of that stuff is actually made in the men's shed. And then you have sports groups, you have community groups, you have youth clubs, you have organisations for older people that the men's sheds actually do a lot of work for. You will very often see big national fundraising events coming from, you know, Malin to Mizzen and coming right down through the country, and men's sheds are actually doing all the stewarding along the way. And so we're not just about the shed, it is the support and the connection within communities. I remember one of the first conversations that I had down in a part of the country that would be within the Just Transition Fund. And the man stood up there and he talked about, you know, spending 40 years of his life working in Burnamona. And when his job in Burnamona ended, he said, you know, he was sitting inside the window in the morning looking out, and all he had was the cup of tea, the toast and the marmalade. And he said when he got introduced to the men's shed, he just was not introduced to 20 guys in a men's shed. He was introduced to 20 guys in a youth club. He was introduced to 20 guys, you know, that were involved in Tidy Towns, another 20 guys that was involved in sports clubs, older persons organisations. He said suddenly a whole new world actually opened up because of the men's shed. And he felt that day, and he had a chair beside him that was empty. And he spoke about a friend of his who died by suicide. And he said, you know, I genuinely believe if my friend was aware of the men's shed, that seat wouldn't be empty. So that's the power of an organisation such as the men's shed. We find a huge amount of, you know, that connection within the sheds now is moving out into what are, I suppose, new communities. Sheds are very neutral spaces. We welcome everybody into a men's shed. Colour, race, religion, sexual orientation, it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. When somebody walks into a men's shed, they're a shedder. Guys don't care who you are, what you are, where you came from. The kettle's plugged in, the chair is pulled out, and everybody is welcome. And we act as a huge support and gel and glue within communities. And that has been seen right around the country in the last year and a half, 2 years, particularly in relation to the crisis in the Ukraine and so forth. So the role that sheds play, I think, is absolutely massive. Within our organisation, you know, we do a lot of stuff around men's health. There's a huge amount of partners that I really need to be thanking here today. Most of them have stands here with us, so I just want to say a huge welcome to everybody that support us in providing health supports for men's within the sheds. There's a huge amount of staff that I need to thank, but I certainly want to thank Eva, James, Ben and Rebecca, who have put a lot of work into making this conference happen here today. Behind every organisation, there's a good board. Eamon, the chairperson's here in front of me. So there's a huge amount of stuff that actually takes place. You may remember after Ireland won the Six Nations, I think it was in 2018, and Joe Smith was asked afterwards, you know, by one of Michael's ex-colleagues, you know, what does it take to win a Six Nations? And they said to him, can you sum it up in a sentence? And he said, well, I can do better than that. I can sum it up in one word. It's everything. And it's a bit like that for the men's sheds. It takes everything, you know. It takes a village to raise a child, to say in China. It takes a village to run a shed. It takes all that huge sort of involvement. Within our organisation, we represent sheds north and south. One of the most amazing things that I have seen on journeys up to Northern Ireland is how sheds act as agents for reconciliation, how they act as agents for change in a real positive way. And these are all the things that happens that the Minister's announcement this morning allows to continue to happen. And I don't think that there's any real way, to be honest, that you can really explain that, or that you can, you know, put that into a communication narrative that really does it justice. So that in itself is a difficulty that we as an organisation, you know, sometimes face, where you know it can be challenging to get your message out there along the way. I didn't intend to sort of start on a quotation from Barack Obama, and I didn't intend to finish on one, but I'm going to. And there's a great statement that he says, when you continue to push on, you achieve what you set out to achieve. And that's the great thing about Sheds. Sheds have been pushing on all the time. It's the one thing that we do. We keep going. So that's a great statement, and I think that's how Sheds have survived over the years, is by continuing to push on. That's how we have 435 sheds in the Republic of Ireland, another 50 in Northern Ireland registered with our organisation. 435 is the largest number of sheds per head of capita anywhere in the world. So there's something that the sheds are responding to in our society. And I think that's one of the most amazing things. There's a great statistic out there that shows that the happier that people are, the longer they live. Not to do with medication, would you believe? It's not to do with a whole lot of things. It's actually to do with happiness. And I can say in my 50-odd years on the planet and 20-odd years working across leadership roles in a number of different organisations, when you walk into a men's shed, there'll be a smile on your face from the time you go in until the time you come out. And that's something very unique. It's that magic kind of dust. As someone said to me, if we could bottle that and sell it. And I said, well, we don't need to bottle it. We have it in the sheds. It's there. So look, thanks everybody. And as Barack Obama would say, keep pushing on. Thank you. Okay, so Michael's not aware of this, but there's going to be a presentation of a pen from the Virginia Men's Shed to the Minister. I know she's under pressure to go, but that presentation is going to take place right now. So we have PJ here, who's just going to present the Minister with a pen that's been made here in the Virginia Men's Shed, and we'll just have a quick photograph.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Minister has to move on, obviously, other pressing engagements. Give her a huge round of applause and thank her for being with us here today. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. I'm glad Enda was quoting Barack Obama there during his speech, as he did very well, as opposed to quoting Donald Trump or... But anyway, as the saying goes, it is what it is. Okay, folks, while the Minister is just leaving us, and as I said, she has one or two other pressing engagements, of course, as ministers do, but we'd like to thank her for being with us here today. Just at this point, we have a couple of speakers, hopefully not too many, but very interesting speakers that I know you're going to enjoy. But right now, I'd ask you, please, if you would, to give a big welcome to author and actor Michael Harding, because Michael is going to give you a unique take on the men's sheds phenomenon. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Mike. How are you doing? You're on tablets. I was over there earlier at some of them stalls, and she says to me, I could take your blood pressure. I says, you will not. I wouldn't like her to know my blood pressure. What business of hers is it, what my blood pressure is? That used to be an attitude, you know, and it's not my attitude anymore because I had a heart attack. And now I'm on the tablets. And I'm feeling much better. And I'm glad to be here. And I feel lucky to be here because, as I say, I had a heart attack in the Crown Plaza in Blanchardstown, which is beside the hospital in Blanchardstown. And as we say in Cavan, wasn't I lucky to have the heart attack in the Crown Plaza? I knew a fella in Cavan one time, this is true, he was in the amateur drama, we were doing the Hacklers. Tommy, I'm sure, know who I'm talking about, but we'll keep the name secret. But it was 3 o'clock in the morning in the Farnham Hotel in Cavan, you know, at a festival club, and, you know, the Carrigallen crowd had gone home singing, and we were still there drinking, and then this friend of mine, we'll call him Tom, he says, I'm off. And he went off, and, you know, it was a wet night. It was snow and drifts of snow coming down, and it was about -8. This is about 30, 40 years ago. But anyway, he went home at that hour of the morning with a tank full of drink on him, and he was like a man who used to drink professionally, you know. The day job was just the day job, but by Jesus, he was a drinker. And he went home, and he got about 3 miles out the road, and he wrapped himself around a tree. And he was there nearly dying until somebody came in the morning and found him. And he was in hospital. I met him about 6 months later, and he would have had, he had wire in his jaw, and he had a tibia and fibia broken, and he had the hip smashed. And he was an appalling wreck. You'd just feel sorry for the poor man. And I said, how are you doing? Michael, he said, wasn't I the lucky man I had drink on me? Because his argument was, do you see, that he was lying in the car for about 4 or 5 hours in the snow in the -4 or 5 degrees, that if he didn't have the drink taken, he would have died. And that is a Cavan optimism, do you know what I mean? We look on the bright side of everything. But anyway, it's a privilege to be here, and it's a privilege to share with you. You growing up, like, I was probably uncomfortable being a man, in the sense that when I looked out at the world when I was in secondary school and I saw, let's say, footballers, and I saw what men did, I kind of knew that I wasn't one of them. Do you know what I mean? Because I wasn't good at football. I was good at, as they used to say, you're good at feck all, Harding. Do you know? I used to write poetry, which wasn't kind of encouraged in them days among the Cavan footballers of St. Pat's College. Do you know? But I used to say I survived adolescence. And then when I grew up, I realized that the one thing I had that saved me from anxiety or worry or depression was talking or telling jokes. And the funniest joke was telling a story of the most miserable thing that ever happened to you. I realized, like, that there's nothing as funny as misery, you know? Like you could be at a dinner table there chatting away, and you might start talking about Brexit or Donald Trump or something. Nobody'd listen to you. And you would divide the room, you know, and the wife would be annoyed with you. You know, a corn-fed chicken roasted and good bottles of wine from Dunn's stores. Money put into it, hours put into it to entertain and impress the neighbours, and you have to fucking start talking about fucking Brexit. And annoying everybody. Do you know what I'm saying? And I learned that the best thing to do in life was tell people how miserable you were. So I'd be after I went through a bout of depression about 2011, and after that I became like, everybody loved me at the table. I'd be sitting there, they'd say, how are you? I'd say, I'm not too good, I'm on tablets. And the whole table would go silent, and they'd start listening to me. Are you, Michael? What kind of tablets? Oh, well, I just suffer a little bit from the depression. Well, they'd be leaning over the table, lovely young women leaning over the table and wanting to hold your hand. God, I didn't know that, Michael, now. I never knew you were suffering like that. Oh, you were a hero. And what I was discovering was that men talking is powerfully therapeutic. And I say that to you because I bear witness to it in my own life. I mean, I have made a career out of being miserable. Do you know? It's great. And like, I know they say, by the way, I know they say that, well, the reason is like men don't talk. You know, men don't talk, women talk, men don't. That's horse manure. That is not true. You know as well as I do that when men get together on their own, you couldn't stop them talking and bitching and gossiping. Cavan men, of course, are the worst at it. I know there's people here from Leitrim, but I'll say this now with real respect, because I love Leitrim, live in Leitrim 30, 40 years nearly, but anyway, they don't talk much. Oh, Jesus, they became... I have neighbours now in Arigna, and I'm 35, I'm there since 93, I can't count it, but I think that's... Is it 40 years? 30 years. I've these neighbours in Arigna, the boys, you know, and I'm up and down that drive for them years, and they'd salute you. It's not even the full hand, you know. I'd say that consider that over emotional. You know? Just the finger, like. And not only that, but they make sure never to eyeball you so they look away and do it. And so when it comes to conversation in Leitrim, I do find it difficult being from Cavan. We're compulsive talkers, do you know? But years ago when there was the big collapse, you know, when we all lost money with AIB, the crash, all that kind of crack, and there was NAMA. I remember being in a certain hotel, I won't say where. This is being recorded. Anyway, I was in a certain hotel in Connacht one time. It was in Connacht. And I was in the sauna. And I says to this fella beside me, is this hotel in Nama? And he said, oh, I don't know. Now, I was in Cavan around the same time. And I met this fella, he's from Cavan. There's the same, like, anyway, I met this fella. We were in a hotel. He's a stranger to me. I says to him, the same question. You know, what do you do in the sauna when you're sitting there naked with other men? And one woman on the bench below you? You try and have some fucking conversation. So says I again, is this hotel in Nama? Listen, he says, Michael, not only is it in Nama, but the wife is driving around in a white Mercedes. And that to me is the level at which men talk. You know what I mean? They nail the truth so beautifully. I says to a fella this morning from Monaghan, he's in there somewhere in the crowd. I says to him, how are you doing? Not great, he says, I'm hanging together like a loose button on an owl shirt. He didn't know I was going to quote him. He was just talking off the top of his head. Do you know what I mean? But there is a natural facility in people to talk, and to talk in beautiful metaphors, beautiful poetry. And we do it all the time. And in fact, sometimes we actually talk purely for the pleasure of talking, purely for the pleasure of it, which is amazing. And I learned that men do that. I learned that men do it hugely when they're working together. Again, I won't say his name, but there's a great plumber near Giva in Roscommon, and he's coming for decades to our house to fix anything to do with the central heating or to do with this, that, or the other. Well, I love to see him coming. I put away a couple of hours of the afternoon because he'll come and he'll sit in the kitchen and he'll just open up about whatever's going on over in Giva. He'll tell you all the gossip of his world, and he'll tell you about weddings he was at and what his niece was wearing and who had an argument. Conversation makes work happen. It's amazing. And we don't even notice we're doing it. Now, you only notice this when you stop talking. When you stop talking. And I stopped talking, funny enough, probably around 2005. And the reason was probably because I was working very hard and I was writing a lot and doing a lot of stuff. And I talked all the time up till then, and then I stopped talking. And after about 6 or 7 years, I realized I'm depressed. I'm not well. And I went to therapy, and therapy was very, very helpful. And I talked to my family, and my family were a huge support. They were always around me, supporting me, and they always said, you will pull out of it. You'll get out of this. But the one thing that got me out of it really was I started talking again. Took about 3 years. I started talking. And I had a lovely neighbour. We had this beautiful neighbour. He was a man who lived on his own. He was a younger man than me. And he loved his animals and he loved his farm. And he used to go up and down the road behind his cattle. And you know the way he wouldn't be hunting the cattle. He'd just have the arm out of he had a Volkswagen Vectra, and he'd just have the arm out of it and he'd be tapping the outside of the door quietly, real gently behind the cattle. And that'd just be enough to move them without stressing them. Do you know what I mean? And he would do that with patience. And you'd see him fathering, he'd have a big bale hay in the back of the Vectra of a Christmas morning to make sure them cattle were never hungry. He was a mighty man. And you'd see him when he had cut the fields in the summer. Sometimes I'd see him, he'd be on the ridge of the hill, and he'd be standing there having a cigarette because he would have been maybe in the tractor the whole day. And he'd stand there and you'd see the blue smoke rising above his head and him alone. And you could see how happy and proud he was of his fields and his cattle and his life. But he wasn't talking. And we buried him in Arigna, and a load of his neighbours carried his coffin in silence up the hill from the church to the beautiful graveyard in Arigna. And there was a lot of people felt regret that we hadn't talked to him, or that he hadn't reached out and talked. It was as simple as that. He wasn't talking. So this thing of talking is so powerful, and men do it so well, and men do it when they work. And whoever was the genius to put together all that and create the men's sheds did a wonderful thing, not just for you men, not just for me, but for wider society. And I'll tell you why, and then I'll go. If I go to a funeral in Arigna, or if I go to a funeral in Donegal, in Ranafast, I will see wake on the side of the road. I'll see Farah in Donegal, the Irish word for wake. And I'll see black and white bollards sometimes. And I do say to myself, Jesus, who could invent black and white bollards, do you know? But there's a funeral. And no matter how hard it is to access that house, so that every single person will be able to access it, you'll find stewards on the road. You'll find men in high vis with lamps at the side of a field, getting traffic in and out and all the rest of it. And that's one of 100 examples of where men functioning, not in jobs, but in community, men functioning and making things and organising things and just being there for young people, vulnerable people, everybody. So that when you do this good thing with the sheds, which is talking together and welcoming each other and being with each other, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it in a way that's enriching the community, enriching this island. And that's why it's a huge honour to be with you today. Thank you.
Michael, thank you so much for that. What I would like you to do at this stage, ladies and gentlemen, once again, is to give Michael a very, very long round of applause. Now, the very simple reason that I've called for that is, as Michael was just wrapping up there a couple of seconds ago, I looked around me and realized that I was the only one left sitting on the stage on my own. And I said to myself, there's something kindly out of kilter here. If I was in a men's shed at the moment, I'd be sitting there on my own, and that doesn't seem right, does it? I did see Enda wandering around the place earlier on. You're not hiding him back there, Michael, are you? Because we have a couple of more speakers, but he's supposed to advise me as to who is speaking next. So does anybody know a good song that we could... Enda! Oh, you see, somebody knows what's going on. We have an order of speakers, but of course, needless to say, we don't always follow that, but that's okay. We have, ladies and gentlemen, give a big welcome, if you would please, to the Governor of the Training Unit of Mountjoy Prison, and that is David Mulligan. And they have their own shed, of course, and he wants to say a few words to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Good morning, everybody. Pity the poor fool that has to follow Michael Harding, because that was fabulous. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, but it's not dead by PowerPoint, I promise you. It's just photographs to help me explain the journey of our men's shed. I should also point out, I believe that the guys back at Mountjoy in the men's shed are tuning in, so I should say a very big hello to them as well. Right, so, thanks. So what is a prison governor from Mountjoy doing, talking to men's shed? Well, obviously we have a men's shed, I'm delighted to say, on the complex. Just to explain Mountjoy complex, there's probably about 1,100 prisoners on that complex this morning, because it's actually made up of several different prisons. You have the old Victorian prison itself, and another one just beside it called the Progression Unit. At the very front, if you ever are in that part of Dublin, there's a red brick building. That's the Docus Centre, it's a female prison. There's also a medical unit that was built in the 1980s as a response to the HIV crisis. And then tucked away at the very back is the training unit. It's a standalone prison by itself, and it was built in 1970. It's a bit of a misnomer now because it was originally built to carry out training for younger guys who would be about to be released. A lot of them would go outside, do their training outside, come back and stay overnight. But there was a huge, big metal workshop there, all sorts of welding and training going on in there. However, it was closed around about 2015, mothballed. And then around about 2019, there was a realization within the organization that we were getting a very aging population of prisoners. And so we looked at what could we do for those prisoners who weren't best suited to be just in the big prisons with much younger prisoners who may be involved in crime, drug seeking and stuff like that. So the decision was made to reopen the training unit for men aged 55 and older. However, COVID happened and everything got shelved for another couple of years. So what is the training unit? Well, if we're working, and we are, we reopened it in 2022. I was the governor. We have 96 inmates in it, and they're all aged over 55. I think the eldest is up into his mid-80s. Probably the average age is 60, 65, somewhere between that. So I didn't do it by myself. I have about 50 staff. The thing about the staff is they were probably like the rest of us, grizzled, had been 20-odd years dealing with all sorts of prisoners and all sorts of problems you can imagine in a prison. So to get them to come into the training unit and change their mindset slightly to deal with the older cohort prisoner was a big ask, but my God, they took it on brilliantly. And I had two wonderful assistants. One a chief nurse officer called Orla Finn, who's not here, and she looked after the physical health of the men. She has a team of nurses, and just from what we were talking about earlier about men talking and maybe not taking their health as seriously as we should, she ran a screening program recently and identified 8 prisoners who are asymptomatic who had cancer, and they're all receiving treatment now and making really good progress. So maybe it's just for all of us to realise we maybe should go and get checked out and don't be hiding things. But the other person is a chief officer called Brian Cahill. Brian's here with me, and we'll be looking forward to speaking to you all afterwards, because as well as the physical health, the mental health was huge for how we were going to try and look after the guys. And I guess that's where the Men's Shed came in. For those of you that don't know Brian, that's him there. And he's actually in the Men's Shed there. That's one of the items one of our guys makes. Probably wasn't expecting to see his face up there in 6 foot. I also want to mention Greg O'Callaghan. He actually is in charge of the Men's Shed back there, and he put in some loads of volunteer work times when he didn't have to be there, just to make sure it kept running. But I'll talk a bit more about that in a while. So how did we get involved in the Men's Shed? Well, Brian contacted Rebecca McLaughlin and asked if would you come in for a cup of coffee to speak to myself and him, just to see if we could actually run a Men's Shed in a prison. And anyone who doesn't know what Rebecca looks like, that's pretty much her. Because she's been nothing but super for us, really enthusiastic. And just the support she's given us has been pretty amazing. I think Brian will agree with that. So what did we have? Well, like I mentioned, the big metal shop that we had, that's actually it. Probably around the time we got Rebecca to come in, we were tidying it up. Bear in mind, the building had been mothballed for about 5 years at that stage. It looked like a scene of one of those movies where humans have left the planet. And foliage and animals had all moved in. There was no lions walking across the yard, but there was certainly pigeons and seagulls nesting everywhere. So first thing we did was clean it up. But we brought Rebecca in. Some of that as we're already upcycling old furniture, but we wanted to do other activities and we wanted advice as to what we could do. And of course, when she saw this big shed, she was blown away by that and says, "Oh, you can do what you want in here, it's great." So we knew we were on the right track. So just to give you an idea, that's a photograph of it now. Now there's no one in it, as you can see. I'm not really allowed to show photographs of the guys, but trust me, on any given day, it's a hive of activity. Those benches along the back there are individual where lads will sit down and do things like wood burning. We've model making. I know Ken is probably there at the moment, finishing off a Messerschmitt 109 or something in the corner. We also upcycle a lot of our pallets, and really if it's broken and we have it in the train unit, we will turn it into something else. It's one of the things we're huge on in there. So we asked the guys what they wanted to do. So a lot of the activities they've suggested themselves. One of the things they do is they restore our old benches around the place. They paint them to make the place look better. That's a wonderful photograph, the two of us. That was actually what I did to one of the papers. And you can see some of the guys in the background working on other things. Bikes. One of the huge things that we do. We're involved in a good bike project. That's Paul McQuaid on Usher's Quay in Dublin. He's been on the Late Late Show with this. Paul gets bikes donated to him, old bikes, and he cleans them, repairs them, and then donates them to the Irish Red Cross, and they go to refugees. So we were lucky enough to get put in touch with Paul, and Paul came in himself, and he still does come in regularly. He trains our guys up in bike maintenance, which is something they'd actually asked us, could they do? It was perfect timing. And I think that's something from the Irish Times. The 60th bike that we made, was the 2000 bike he was donating, and it was going to a 15-year-old Ukrainian girl living out in the middle of the country somewhere so she would get to school. So you can imagine the sense of satisfaction that our shedders are getting, not just from the work they're doing, restoring the bikes. They polish the chrome, they change the tires, the brakes, you name it, and clean them up. They look like things that could go under a Christmas tree by the time they're finished with them. They really do. But then to know that they're then going out to this really good cause is just terrific. And going back to what we said about mental health, when we did open, we wanted our men to feel less isolated because they were coming from big prisons where an older guy maybe wasn't fitting in too well. So to be able to bring them into an area where they could sit down, do something meaningful, no targets, no nothing like that. Trust me, they drink plenty of tea and coffee. But it was brilliant for their mental health. Stops the social isolation, which can happen in prisons, certainly with the older prisoner. So that's been hugely successful for us. Now that's just an old yard that we had. It's actually a football pitch. That was a five-a-side football pitch that was into disrepair. So the other part of the men's shed that we have is a polytunnel. In fact, we've two of them. There was one old battered polytunnel there when we arrived, and many of the guys expressed an interest in growing flowers and plants and stuff like that. So we set them up, the polytunnel, and it was hugely successful. That's the original polytunnel. I actually had to get the guys to leave to take the photograph, and trust me, everyone that picked up their cup of coffee and walked past me. It's a little hive of activity as well. On any given day, there could be 10 or 15 lads working in the two polytunnels on top of the 20 odd that would be working in the man's shed. There's only 96 in the training unit, so roughly 50% of people are working, I don't even like using the word work, but they certainly are in the men's shed working away. That's the second polytunnel behind that. You can see the fruit of some of their labours there, some of the plants that they've managed to grow. And a few weeks ago, you'd have seen nothing but hanging baskets in those polytunnels. This time of year isn't great now, but I can't get over the work that they do. That is that shed. Sorry, that's that yard I showed you a couple of minutes ago. That's what they've transformed it into. Now, the picture on the wall is a wrapping. It's the Phoenix Park. But all the plants and all the planters, everything there has come from our man's shed. And it's a wonderful place for them to sit and relax. It's right in the middle of Mount Joy Complex in Frisborough. And when you sit down on it, certainly on a warm day, it can feel like you're in a park somewhere. It's really great, again, for the mental health of the men. And nothing is wasted. The green thing on the left is actually part of the fence that we cut down, and it's been used now for planting flowers. We're growing flowers up around the original fence, so it'll be almost like an enclosed garden. What else have we got? Ah, yes, the bench. You saw the bench we were standing in front of earlier. Well, we were put in touch, Rebecca put us in touch with Clem Fallon from the Irish Cancer Society, and they were launching daffodil benches. And old benches are being refurbed, painted in daffodil colours, and are going out into various parks and areas. And I don't know if you can see right in the middle there is a plaque, there's a QR code. The QR code, if you scan it with your phone, will give you all sorts of information on cancer services and also how you can donate to the Irish Cancer Society. Men's Shed Ireland is also one of the emblems on that. So it's, again, it highlights the work being done by the Men's Shed. And yet again, it's something our men are doing that really gives them a sense of giving something back to the communities. Something Men's Shed has given us that we just couldn't get elsewhere. So I can't speak highly of enough of how Men's Shed has been able to transform what we do in the prison for the men, to give them a sense of community and, again, giving something back, let alone going back to be able to talk, sit around, drink coffee. It's just been a huge success for us. I want to show you the garden outside. That was overgrown. That was, oh sorry, no, before I get there, another thing we do is we collect our rainwater. We're big into upcycling and recycling. So we collect our rainwater, so all the plants around the grounds, we water ourselves with rainwater. I know Brian is huge, he's looking at doing more of them, and we might be able to flush all the toilets with our own rainwater. We have a biodigester, so all the waste food goes into that, and it turns it into fertilizer. We fertilize all our own stuff. I think Brian's even looking at getting solar panels at some stage and trying to really transform the unit into a very green building, which is fabulous. Why am I showing you pictures of Australia? Well, it's kind of it comes around a circle, because I believe Men's Shed started in Australia, but about 2 months ago, we had a visit from 2 nurse officers from the Australian prison service, the penal system over there. And we showed them around, showed them what we were doing, showed them the Men's Shed, and they were blown away by it. They said they'd never seen anything like it in a prison anywhere, and couldn't get over the community ethos that we had in the place. And all I could think of, yeah, that's Men's Shed for you. That's what we've managed to transform into a small little prison on the complex. I had to leave the train unit a few weeks ago. They promoted me, which was nice of them. And people say to me now, you've moved on to bigger and better things. Well, I stop them and say, no, definitely a bigger thing, but not better, because I don't think there's anything better in the prison system at the moment than the training unit. And a lot of that is down to the ethos that we have there that comes directly from the Men's Shed. So all I can say now is thank you for the invitation. Thanks for listening to me, and more important, thanks. Keep going, doing what you're doing, because if you can inspire prisoners in a prison, you can basically do anything. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Mulligan, thank you very much, David. Now we have a presentation from a good friend of the Men's Sheds Association, Dr. Carol Power from UCC, the Centre for Cooperative Studies. Some of you may know Dr. Power's work. She's been doing a lot of research on the sheds, but today she couldn't be with us in person, so we have a short video presentation, and it's about men's sheds as change makers.
Hello, my name is Carol Power, and I work with the Centre for Cooperative Studies, University College Cork. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to address the Irish Men's Sheds Association conference today. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person due to work commitments here in UCC. I've been asked to give a brief overview of a research project that I led, which focused on how Irish men's sheds are responding to social and environmental challenges. This research culminated last December in the publication of the report that you see here on screen. The project was funded by the Irish Research Council's New Foundation Scheme, which promotes collaborative research between academic researchers such as myself and community organisations, in this case, the Irish Men's Shed Association. So, to give you a very brief background and context, as many of you will know, in 2019 the Irish government designated the Irish Men's Sheds Association as one of a number of SDG champions. The SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals, are a set of 17 goals agreed by the United Nations in 2015 to work towards tackling social issues such as poverty, social exclusion and inequality, and environmental challenges such as climate change and biodiversity loss. The SDG champion designation recognised the vital role that men's sheds play, not only in terms of the well-being benefits to members, but also the wider benefits of their contribution to their communities, and how they can set an example to others in the community through their actions. It was the SDG designation that inspired this research project. Men's sheds are well recognised for their positive impact on participants' health and well-being by providing a social focus for men and a place for them to participate in a range of activities. Health promotion is well developed in Irish men's sheds through initiatives like the Sheds for Life programme. But men's sheds are also contributing positively to environmental sustainability. And we were interested in finding out more about this work and identifying opportunities to develop this role. So to learn more, we engaged with members of sheds across the island of Ireland. This involved an online survey of activities offered in men's sheds, and we were delighted to receive responses from 159 sheds. 9 online interviews and 5 online focus groups addressing key themes such as working in nature or for nature, recycling and upcycling, fitness, nutrition and health related activities, and arts, crafts and music. Some of you may have participated in interviews and focus groups and will recall meeting myself or other members of the team, including Michelle and Alana. And we very much enjoyed meeting you and were delighted by the way participants enthusiastically engaged with us and with each other in the course of the research. We also drew on information from websites, social media, newspaper reports, and so on. And the study was granted ethical approval by the Social Research Ethics Committee at University College Cork. So as you will see here, we had good representation from across the island of Ireland. We had Leinster and Munster accounting for the largest number of respondents to the survey, but there was also representation from Connacht and Ulster. And equally, we engaged with participants in the focus groups and interviews from across the provinces. So, first of all, we wanted to find out about the rich variety of activities offered in different sheds. And it would be impossible to list all of them here. But among the most commonly reported activities were woodwork or metalwork, which are offered by 80% of sheds. And this overlapped with several other activities. For example, over 70% of sheds put their skills to use in making or installing bird boxes, bat boxes, and bug hotels. In many cases, participants told us that these initiatives came about when they were given unwanted timber that might otherwise go to waste, but they evolved into biodiversity projects. There were plenty of examples of these activities rippling beyond the sheds and sparking interest in nature and wildlife among local people. And we encountered a few collaborations with wildlife organisations who also provided support and advice to sheds. Sheds are also seen as a go-to place in many communities for repairing broken items. Additionally, over half of the sheds were engaged in craft projects using recycled materials. This promotes reuse and recycling, which has a positive impact on the environment and helps more communities move away from the throwaway culture where we constantly replace old with new, sending unwanted goods to landfill. For the most part, making nesting boxes, carrying out repairs and upcycling craftwork were not intentionally developed as biodiversity or climate action projects. They simply provided a work-based activity around which social interaction and skill sharing could occur. And finally, in terms of the most common activities, it's no surprise that health-related activities featured strongly, including talks by healthcare professionals, fitness activities, cooking, and so on. Within individual sheds and the wider men's shed movement, there is a wealth of skills, knowledge, and expertise. But sheds were also open to learning from outside the shed, and there were many examples of collaborations with other groups for mutual and wider community benefit. Over half of the sheds collaborated with tidy towns groups, community or parish councils, churches, and schools. For instance, men's sheds contributed to landscaping in their communities. making picnic tables, planters, buddy benches, and so on. And they participated in or led clean-up projects. There was also significant collaboration with local development organisations, with cultural and natural heritage groups, wildlife organisations, sports clubs and charities, to name but a few. And there was also collaboration with the public sector, such as the HSE, local authorities, and education and training boards. There were numerous examples of how men's sheds are helping to address social and environmental challenges. We see here how these efforts map onto the Sustainable Development Goals. Some positive outcomes result from initiatives such as Sheds for Life, which are specifically designed with men's sheds for men's sheds to address health issues. But other activities can also lead to a range of positive outcomes, even when they occur organically rather than by design or intention. Men's sheds provide a social space for men and the opportunity to engage in activities. And a lot of that work benefits the wider community and helps to address key challenges like social isolation and inequality. For instance, while men's sheds are not educational institutions, they provide opportunities for lifelong learning, whether drawing on outside expertise or sharing skills and knowledge through the shoulder-to-shoulder learning that is a key feature of the men's shed movement. Men's sheds are widely researched, and that research relies on participants giving their time to engage with researchers. It is important for me as a researcher that men's sheds get some benefit from their engagement with researchers and that the research does not lie forgotten on a shelf. We want our research to make a difference. Based on our findings, we make a number of recommendations in our report to enable the men's shed movement to become even more powerful agents of change in their communities. Firstly, it is important not to lose sight of what men's sheds are about. A place where men can interact socially and where they can engage in collective activities according to their interests and wishes. The saying that the kettle is the most important tool in the shed came up many times in our discussions with participants. And it's that social interaction that is critical for well-being. Men's health and well-being should remain the core focus in sheds. The expression health by stealth has been used to describe the way participation in sheds can have a positive impact on well-being and provides opportunities for men to become more aware, more educated about health issues and more open to discussing them in an informal setting. We think that the health by stealth approach could equally be applied to environmental sustainability. In fact, it is already happening. The fact that almost 3/4 of sheds are involved in producing nesting boxes for wildlife means that they are actually engaging in biodiversity conservation already. There is huge scope to build on what's already happening. As a starting point, this might include awareness campaigns and guidelines for sheds on environmental issues, shedcasts on relevant issues, and case studies of exemplary work by sheds that are already active in this area. To advance this, drawing on the experience and strengths of the Sheds for Life initiative, we recommend that the Irish Men's Sheds Association consider the development of an environmental conservation initiative where they work with expert organisations to co-develop and co-design a suite of learning programmes for sheds that are interested in participating. In our report, we refer to some of the literature that highlights the health benefits of spending time engaging with the natural environment. Therefore, developing participants' engagement with environmental issues through practical projects could provide a new direction for men's sheds that could work in synergy with the goals of improving men's health and well-being. Beyond the benefits to members, which of course is the most important thing, this could also be an opportunity for Ireland to lead by example, demonstrating to the international men's shed movement how they can play an active role in caring for the environment. I would strongly urge you to consider embracing this challenge. If you would like to read the full report, which you can see here on the left of the screen, you can download it from the address provided. If you would prefer a shorter summary, there is a link to an article that I wrote for RTE Brainstorm with Ray O'Connor, one of the co-authors of the report. So finally, I'd like to thank the Irish Men's Sheds Association for the invitation to address the conference today and for supporting this research. Most of all, sincere thanks to the men who engaged with us in this project. Without you, it would not have been possible. I wish you well with your conference today, and I look forward to seeing men's sheds in Ireland go from strength to strength. Thank you.
As you can see, they're jumping the gun on me slightly there. Ladies and gentlemen, our next two speakers are going to come forward and talk to you, and I know you're going to give a huge welcome, please, to both to Kate Chandler, Communities and Engagement Pollinator Officer with the National Biodiversity Data Centre, and also would you welcome, please, Karen Moore, Community Climate Action Officer of Laois County Council, and they're going to speak to you next. Thank you very much indeed.
Dear Grieve, good morning everyone. Lovely to see so many of you here. Thanks, brilliant. Important tool. I'm Kate Chandler. I'm the Communities and Engagement Pollinator Officer for the National Biodiversity Data Centre. And the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan, which I work on, is a framework bringing together different groups and different sectors across the island of Ireland to create a landscape where pollinators can survive and thrive. And I'm going to try and be quick and not give you too many slides, but I'm going to share with you some practical ideas today on how you might be able to help biodiversity in your sheds. And so many of you are already doing this already. We've already heard today bird boxes, bat boxes, nesting boxes, containers. I've been chatting to a few of you this morning about the work you've been doing, which is fantastic. But hopefully, whether you've been doing this work for a while and you want to know what else you can do, or if you're just getting started and you want to know how, hopefully this will give you some ideas. And everything I'm going to be talking about can be found on our website, pollinators.ie. But before I talk about any of that, I just want to ask, why pollinators? Why are we focused on this group of tiny insects? And there's a couple of answers to that question, really. As you know, pollinators transfer pollen between flowers, helping them reproduce. And because of that, everything hinges on them. About 78% of plants, wild plants on the island of Ireland, depends on insect pollination. So everything that keeps our island green and beautiful, the trees, the flowers, the hedgerows, everything depends on these guys. So they are hugely important. And globally as well, I think it's about 100 crops provide 90% of the world's food, and of those, 71 are pollinated by bees. So we really rely on them for our own food supply, livelihoods of farmers and other businesses connected to crop production, and also just for the health of our wider environment and all the other insects, birds, mammals that rely on that as well. In Ireland, we have 100 different types of bee, which is a number that kind of astonished me when I first heard it, because you wouldn't think that there are that many, but there are. One of those is our native honeybee. They live in hives and are often looked after by beekeepers. And of the rest, about 20% are bumblebees, this one in the middle up here, and 80%, the vast majority of them, are what we call solitary bees, the one on the far left here. And they're called solitary bees because they nest on their own. They often don't look like bees at all. They look like flies or wasps. And they're the ones who would be using your bee hotels or insect boxes, because they like to, a lot of them like to nest in wood. And it's these guys, it's the bumblebees and the solitary bees that are the ones that are really in trouble. About a third of them on the island of Ireland is threatened with extinction. But the good news is there are really simple things we can do to help them, and that can roughly be broken down into two things, and that's providing food and providing shelter. So first of all, providing food. Pollinators need good sources of nectar and pollen, and native plants in that regard are always the best because they've evolved alongside each other, so they're perfectly adapted to give pollinators what they need. And these include native flowering hedgerows and trees, but also wildflowers. And when I say wildflowers, I'm not talking about what you get in a wildflower seed packet, because often those aren't native at all. What I'm talking about are the flowers that pop up naturally when we just give them a chance to grow. Things like dandelions and clovers and bird's foot trefoil, and we can help them grow by just mowing a little bit less. And some of you might have done No Mow May, and hopefully you've seen for yourself how if you give them a chance, they'll actually grow. But reducing mowing isn't without its challenges. And one issue we're seeing coming up again and again is in areas that are managing long flowering meadows. And these are areas that are cut once a year in September when the seeds have dropped in August. And they're fantastic habitats. You get loads of wildflowers growing in there and beneficial grasses. It provides food, provides nesting sites for pollinators over the summer. And they don't need to be large. They can just be verges or small patches of grass. But when they are large, it can be a bit hard to know what to do with all the grass growth in September. It can be a bit overwhelming. And also knowing what to do with the clippings, because a really important part of managing long flowering meadows is that cut and lift, because if you let the grass rot back into the soil, the fertility goes up and the wildflowers won't grow. They need nutrient poor soil. So that cut and lift is a really important part of that process. And this might be where your shed can come in. And what we're seeing is more and more communities turning to traditional methods to manage long flowering meadows and doing some scything. So this is Abbey Leake's Tidy Towns. They won the Tidy Towns Pollinator, they were highly commended in the Tidy Towns Pollinator Award this year. And for Heritage Week last year, they had a community scything day. And they had a long flowering meadow that they were managing near the church. And they got, I think it was with the Lee Offaly Wildlife Trust, taught them scything methods, and they just made a day of it, invited the community to come along, and they made traditional haystacks. So it's a traditional skill that would be great to keep alive, and some of you may be doing this already. And also with the grass clippings, what to do with the large volumes of that, maybe that could go into a community composter, and then everyone can benefit from it. So, as we've seen, native plants are always the best, but non-native plants can also help in the right places. And we've got loads of lists on our websites of plants that are particularly beneficial, like bulbs, herbs, vegetables, like snowdrops, crocuses, fantastic. And the good rule of thumb is to try and have something in flower between February and October, because that's the life cycle of most pollinators. And there's loads of ways sheds can get involved in that. Like I'm sure so many of you, almost all of you here, have been involved in making the upcycled containers and planters we've seen already today. This on here is some upcycled containers that were made by Mullingar Shamrocks GA with the Tidy Towns. And they actually went a step further and made a whole sensory garden. And sensory gardens, some of you might have heard of, they're getting more and more popular. They're about creating opportunities to connect with nature through the senses. So you might have colourful flowers, you might have herbs that smell nice, you might have apple trees and fruit trees that you can pick fruit from and eat. And more, as we're finding that nature is so important for our own health and well-being, we're seeing more and more of these sensory gardens popping up. So that's our sensory garden flyer. It gives you a little bit more information. You can download that on our website. But that, if you want to really get your teeth into something, that might be something to consider doing with in collaboration with another group in your community. And then moving on to providing shelter. This is another really important thing for pollinators, because most bees don't actually live in hives. Bumblebees nest in long grass, and solitary bees, most of them actually nest in the ground. I skipped past that photo there. You see those little holes in the bank? That's solitary mining bee nesting holes. They burrow into the soil there and lay their eggs. So helping them can be as simple as scraping back some bare earth. But the cavity nesting solitary bees, they're the ones who would be nesting in your bee boxes, and you can see the one there. If they're plugged up like that, that's a good sign. That means someone's in, and they've laid their eggs there, and the bees will be coming out, baby bees will be coming out in the spring. So look, I know loads of you have been making bee boxes already. It's a fantastic project for the shed. It can be as simple as just drilling some holes in some spare unvarnished pieces of wood. We've got guidelines for how to do this on the website if you want some ideas. What we'd recommend is keeping them quite small, because what we're finding is the bigger ones can start to attract predators and birds. It's like a buffet for them. So if you want to be making those, try and keep them quite small and make sure they're near a food source as well, because bees tend to forage quite close to where they're nesting. And just whizzing through here, so that's the nesting habitat guide on our website. It's all free to download. Another way you can help pollinators, and this is often overlooked, but it's really important, is actually recording them, because we won't know what we're doing is working unless we're actually keeping track of numbers. And it's a really useful thing to do if you're trying to take action for pollinators in your area. You can do a survey of them at the start, see what's there, and then later on, and you'll be able to get a sense of how that's improving, the numbers are going up. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. There's what we call a flower insect timed count, which is, or a fit count, and that's where you watch a patch of flowers for about 10 minutes and count how many insects visit, and we've got a free app for that. It's a really nice one to do with a cup of tea. You don't need to be an expert, you just need to know the difference between like a bee and a butterfly, and that's a really handy, quick one to do. If you really want to get your teeth into something, the bumblebee monitoring scheme is a bit more involved. That's where you walk a 1 to 2 kilometre route once a month, and count the different types of bumblebees that you see, and that requires a little bit of training. There's a free course on our website, all the different types of bumblebee, but that's really helpful for us because it helps us track bumblebee numbers, and information about both of those on our website. And finally, as we've already seen today, and as you know yourselves, as with everything, you have more impact when you work with others, and no one knows your community better than you. And we've already heard today how crucial you are at being that glue that keeps your community together. So sometimes a good place to start is finding others who want to do similar work. And there are loads and loads of campaigns now and projects going on in different organisations for biodiversity. Like, you might have a Tidy Towns group who wants to work towards the Pollinator Award. There might be a Green Schools. There might be a GAA doing the Green Clubs programme. And new this year, if you have a local church, they might be doing the Return to Nature initiative, which was launched earlier this year by the Irish Catholic Bishops' Conference to turn 30% of churchyards biodiversity friendly. So the will might be there and the interest might be there, but people might not have the skills or know where to start or the tools. So working with others might be a good place to start. And I'll just sort of leave you with a really hopeful thought, which is that even though pollinator numbers are in decline on the island of Ireland, what we're seeing now, and this is fantastic, is that local populations are increasing in places where action is being taken to help them, and that's because of community groups who are, mowing less, planting the right types of flowers, that are making an effort to work together to help pollinators. So we know what we're doing is working, we just need to do more of it. Those are a few of those initiatives that I was mentioning just there. So I'll leave you with that. As I say, there's loads of information on our website. We've got guidelines for community groups, farmers, businesses, schools, plant lists, signage templates. So do go and take a look, and well done on everything you're doing already, and good luck with all of your work, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Kate. Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for having me here today. I'm Karen Moore. I'm the Community Climate Action Officer for Laois, so I work with Laois County Council. I have some great news for you today, and that is that the fund is opening in early December. So it links in quite a bit with what Dr. Power was speaking with us on earlier, and indeed Kate as well. And I want you to see this fund hopefully as an opportunity for your men's sheds to actually get some money to spend on getting climate action projects underway and in continuing to do the ones you already are doing. So what will the fund support? Well, I mentioned climate action. So what exactly is climate action? If we break it up, there's two parts to taking action. One is reducing the pollution that's causing climate change, and they call that mitigation. And the other one is adaptation, where actually we do have to change the way we're doing things because our climate has already changed and will continue to change. No matter how much we work to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, we are locked into a certain amount of climate change now and in the future. So there's the two parts of climate action. But when we look at what the fund, the Community Climate Action Fund, will support, and I just want to stress the fund is available at a national level. So although I'm working for Laois, working with Laois County Council, there's one of me in almost every city and council, city council and county council in Ireland. The only one we're missing at the moment, I think, is Donegal, but they will be in situ soon to allow you to access this fund. So breaking down a little bit into what the fund will actually support in terms of direct climate action. Well, one of the things is that mitigation piece I mentioned, where we're trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So projects that will do that. Also helping our communities deal with that climate change that's already happened and that we're kind of locked into. And that's that adaptation. Those kind of projects are helping us. As you may have heard of the phrase climate resilience. We need to build our climate resilience. We need to build ourselves up to be able to cope with the changes that are coming and have already arrived. And another factor is helping us move to an economy that is less fossil fuel dependent. So what we've done for the last couple of 100 years isn't working anymore, and it needs to be a cleaner, greener economy that we're moving to. And you'll have heard the phrase probably a low carbon economy. So obviously based on more renewable energy sources. So I mentioned that the fund will be opening in early December. So the launch date has been confirmed as the first week in December. It's the 6th. There may be a couple of councils that are going a little bit later than that. But I will give you the contact details of your county council or city council climate action officer at the end of the talk. So what is it? Well, unusually, it's actually 100% project funding. So if your project applies and is successful, you get all the money to see that project through to completion, okay? And there are options for a 25% of the funding upfront to actually ensure that no community group is out of pocket if they can't afford to pre-fund the start of the project themselves. So it's a very exciting opportunity for men's sheds to continue the type of work that you're doing. Dr. Power's presentation outlined the kind of statistics nationally that, upcycling and recycling are huge undertakings that the men's sheds are already involved in. 70% of groups repairing broken items. Craft projects using recycled items from 50%, more than 50% of groups. Composting, 30% of groups are involved in some sort of composting, and gardening and growing food. Half of the groups nationally are involved in that. And we'll see how these are climate actions in a little bit. So the fund has its project types kind of streamed under 5 different themes. We have community energy is one of the themes. Active or sustainable travel is one of the other themes. Food and waste. Then there's shopping and recycling. and local climate and environmental action is one of the other themes. And as I'm going through, again, I'd like you to think, well, what are we already doing that we actually do need help to buy materials for? The fund will cover capital costs of projects. That's the direct climate action piece that the fund wants to support. It wants to get things done, and I want you to have a little think as we're going through some of the examples of what you think the fund could support you with in terms of what you're already doing, but also maybe some new projects might come up while I'm talking. And a tip is for your project to make an application to the fund and to really elevate it is to look at applying under more than one of these themes. So don't just curtail yourself to maybe the gardening, under food and waste and growing food perhaps. Try and take in as many themes as possible to elevate your application. And just talking about the application, because a lot of community groups suffer from really onerous application forms that they have to fill out for any funding. Would that be fair to say? I think that's a lot of people's experience. Well, I've got another bit of good news. The job of the Community Climate Action Officer in your city council, in your county council, is to give groups access to this funding. Our role is hugely being part of the support for you to actually fill out that application form. Okay? So again, we are your resource to access the funding. That's actually our job, is to administer the fund. So one of the themes, as I mentioned, is communities and energy. So reducing the climate impact of community buildings by using less energy, using renewable energy, and avoiding heat loss. That's one of the big things that we often forget about. Just save, make sure that we're not wasting heat and energy. Are there renewable energy projects that your men's shed can install? Is it PV solar, a small windmill, even hydrogeneration? We have interest in Laois from some community groups that want to install micro hydro generation. So don't forget the power of water. And also retrofitting community buildings. I've visited a lot of men's sheds already in Laois to do with giving them access to this fund. And I see the conditions that some of the men's sheds are in and the conditions that the users, yourselves, are expected to work in. Hence, maybe, certainly in the winter, an awful lot of tea and coffee because they're cold, some of them are damp, they're just not fit for purpose. Can this fund help your men's shed become the comfortable, safe, warm, welcoming environment, not only in terms of conversation and cups of tea, but actually the physical environment that it should be? So have a think about that in terms of retrofitting the buildings that your men's shed are actually taking place in. And then the sustainable travel theme. Well, we have a lovely picture here of Duro's Pedal Vintage. Again, they're based in Laois, and they have an bike library. And it's available for their members. They're not a men's shed, they're a cycling group. But I just thought it was interesting as an example. Can you offer something like this in your men's shed for your members and the wider community? So a bike library, just like a book library. You take a bike, you try it out. You use it a bit, maybe you like it so much you end up getting one of your own. Or maybe you're quite happy and it serves the purposes you're using it for to just use the bike from your bike library. Okay? So again, the fund would fund a bike library for an organisation, for a community group. And they would be free to use for the community. Cycle parking, there's a men's shed I'm looking at in a town in Laois, and they're looking to get cycle parking, covered cycle parking, so that some of the members can feel comfortable locking up their bike safely and they won't get drenched in the rain while they're inside doing what they're doing with the other members. And then another possibility is the bike repair and upcycling. Is there particular machinery and tools, materials that your men's shed needs to get involved and to keep up your involvement in these projects? We've seen some fantastic examples of the bike upcycling from Mountjoy, for instance. One other thing I wanted to mention just as an idea is the Cycling Without Age Trishaw. Is your men's shed a place that can apply for the funding for this trishaw, and can some of your members get trained as pilots, which is what you are called when you're cycling the trishaw. You're actually a pilot. I'm a pilot for the Maynooth Cycling Without Age group, and we take out anybody who books in on our app in our trishaw around Maynooth, around the old university, up and down the canal. It's actually used by St. John's as well for their service users during the week. And it's a fantastic charity to get involved with. So have a think about maybe making an application in under that. And that would hit the sustainable and active travel piece for the fund. So in the food and waste category, we have projects that are looking at community gardens. We've got a small veg trug here. Now, I know you can build this, but can we help with the materials that you need to build these? Can we fund that for you? And community fridges is another one. Can the men's shed become a hub for a community fridge where unused, maybe close to their expiry date food is centrally stored for those people who just hate to see food waste, basically, like myself, can't stand food waste. But also to maybe help people who need a little bit of extra help with their weekly shop, that they can come and take what's available in the community fridge. It's another fantastic initiative. And community gardens, we've got a big one here as an example in Tucker in Cork. They've got a vandal-proof polytunnel. It's got the pointed roof, and it has a rainwater harvesting system attached to it, and they've got raised beds. Again, thinking what materials do you guys need, in your men's sheds to get these kind of projects off the ground. And the repair cafe, we've spoken a lot about the upcycling and reuse service that men's sheds actually perform in many of our communities. So perhaps becoming more of a community repair hub and really building on your fantastic experience with what you're doing with regards to making sure that we move away from that single-use, throw away and replace culture. The local climate and environmental action theme is really a holistic look at everything all together, but as well it's kind of looking at how nature can help us improve how we reduce greenhouse gas emissions, so for instance bog restoration, but also how we deal with the climate change we already have happening at the moment. And we've got projects under there, mini forests, pollinator projects, which Kate of course went into fantastic detail on, the opportunities there, energy gardens, roof gardens, and dispersed orchards. Again, linking in with the pollinators. The dispersed orchards are an idea where a community gets together to plant the trees that pollinators will fertilize. And so you have an orchard, not in a traditional square area that you would often have historically, but actually throughout a community, and the pollinators can move from one food source to another. So I suppose if you're thinking about these bigger, greening projects, think about your men's shed and what land you own or indeed have leased, because you just need a 5-year minimum lease. That's all you need to access the fund, depending on where your men's shed is. Can you do some of this around and on, say if it's a roof garden, in your men's shed? As an example, here's the 5 themes in one building. So we've got a community group. They've got all 5 themes represented in their application. They're planting a mini forest around the building. They've got monthly repair cafes happening, and they've got a water refill station to reduce plastic bottle use. They've got garden allotments and community composting. And Kate mentioned a fantastic idea of helping groups that are struggling with the meadow cuttings as well. The sustainable travel, installing cycle parking, having bike repair sessions, and with the actual building, retrofitting, making it warmer, a better place to be, and maybe even getting a renewable energy source in there. I do want to mention, there was some figures up on that slide. So I do want to mention the kind of project scales that you can apply for to the fund. So we have it all the way up to €100,000 is the max for one project. So we have small projects are considered up to 20,000. We have another scale then, medium, are considered 21 to 50,000. And then the larger projects go from 51 to 100,000. And I'll stress again, that's 100% funding. So thinking about what your men's shed might like to apply for, contact your local community climate action officer. As I said, there's one of me in every city and council and county council, except Donegal, unfortunately, at the moment. That's really hard to read. Don't worry about it. I'm sure you're all going to get the slides from today, and your officer's contact details and name will be there. And yes, thank you very much, and delighted to be here and speak to you all today. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can, if we have any time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Give them a huge, big round of applause. They're really excellent. Thank you. Well, now, folks, over the last while, you have been very good. You've been very attentive, listening to our speakers and taking all that excellent information in. At this stage, we want to do something just slightly different for a few minutes, because, as I said, we've all been sitting here. But we're going to get you, well, I'm not going to get you. Somebody is going to get you to stretch and to smile. Now, I know the smiling bit looks easy enough. Let's see how good you are on the stretching bit. Would you welcome, please, from the Cavan Sports Partnership, Carmel Dowdall, who's going to talk you through it. Thank you very much indeed. Am I glad I brought the crutch? I was fascinated. One thing, looking down, and well done everybody, by the way, you were fantastic. But one thing that was very important about it was the number of you who couldn't tell your right foot from your left foot, you know. So she was going right foot and you're going. Anyway, well done. That was a bit of fun. A big, huge thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, to Carmel Dowdall for doing all that for us. Now, before we come on to the next part of our presentation here, we're coming towards the closing segment of it. There are one or two things. First of all, I know there are a fair number of people the other side of the partition here, and we would like them, folks over there, if you can hear me, we would like you for this next section to come back and join us here in the main part of the arena, because I think that you will find what we have coming up next very interesting to all of you. So I know you've been taking a little bit of a breather out there, and that's fair enough, and having maybe a cup of tea or something like that. But I would appeal to all of you who are out there, if you would please, come back and join us this side of the partition, because, as I said, I think that you will find the next little section quite informative. Before all of that, this happens every time at every presentation for as long as I can remember, going back down through the years. Would the owner of car number... This is true, by the way, this is not a joke. There is a car blocking a disabled spot outside, and we would like you, please, if it's your car, to move it. It's a grey Hyundai, and the number is 221 LM179. Thanks be to God, they handed me up this thing and said, oh, it's not my car anyway, so I'm off the hook, it's okay. So, folks, that's... Huh? Is it your car? It's on a disabled thing, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know whether he's a disabled driver or not. I'm just reading out the message that I was given, all right? Is that fair enough? Jesus, there's always somebody who wants to start trouble, Christ. All I did was read out the message. With my apologies to you, I'll just read that out again, just in case. And after what happens after that's up to everybody else. Grey Hyundai 221 LM179. Fella making off with the case here, must be his car. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, and again, one last appeal to people the other side of the partition out there. If you can come in and join us for this, if you like, roundup section here and what we're doing today, which has all been very important and continues to be through the next section, would you welcome, please, up onto the stage, Martin Sweeney. And Martin is from the ARC Cancer Centre, and he wants to talk to you about, well, very important things and something very important. Welcome, please, Martin. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed, folks. First of all, I'd like to just personally say how happy I am to be here today and to be discussing this topic of prostate cancer. Since my own surgery in 2015, I've been a patient advocate for people who have had a prostate cancer journey somewhere in their lives, and not necessarily people who were treated for prostate cancer, but who have had issues relating to the prostate, because it is very common and prevalent amongst men of our generation. So the first thing I'd like to do is to welcome up on stage three very important people. They're the three men, part of the men's sheds, who are part of a pilot project last year to inform more people in the sheds about prostate cancer. And some of you may have been to the talks that these lads and their colleagues gave. So could you give a big welcome, please, to, in no particular order, Joe Fenton from Castlebar, Kevin Brogan from Drogheda, who's also the Louds men's shed rep, and Mark Jean Brannock from Carrow. Thank you. Just when the lads are getting settled, could I ask a question, show of hands, if you wouldn't mind? Has anybody in the room been diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lives? Wow, so like definitely 12 or 15 men here, and you're all here, which is the best sign of all. Men who are diagnosed with prostate cancer in time have a 98% chance of being alive 5 years later. So the big message today has to be find out what your state of health is and whether or not you might have a reason to get further investigations done or whatever. So without further ado, I'm going to go to the lads, and I'm going to start with Joe. And we're just going to have a discussion here for the next 15 minutes, talk about their stories and how their lives changed with their prostate cancer experience. And with Joe, you don't have and never had prostate cancer, but your prostate was giving you a lot of health problems for a long time. You might just give us your story. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, a bit exhausted after the previous, but yeah, I had difficulties with my prostate. Started in 2008. Now, when I had the procedure done that helped my situation, my brother-in-law died from cancer, and that really galvanized me to maybe tell my story, maybe that I could help somebody along the way. In 2008, I had a very bad urinary infection, and the urine flow from the bladder stopped, and I had to get a catheter inserted. And I was in hospital for nearly a week. And when I recovered, my GP said, your prostate is large. I was about 55 at the time. He said, your prostate is large. It enlarges with age beyond 50, but yours is large to start with. He said, you need to come to me for a physical examination every year, which I did. And anytime I got a bit of a cold or a flu, I was concerned because I didn't want to get that infection because it was really difficult. But come sort of when I went up into my late 60s, the situation deteriorated, and I was getting up 3-4 times a night. I was struggling in public situations, an urge to go and not able to go, really difficult. And again, the flow ceased, and I had to get a catheter in again, and I went to a urologist, and he told me, he gave me what they call a flow test, and you empty your bladder, which I did, or attempted to do, and when I went back in, he was able to tell me there was still 40% urine still in the bladder, which is a massive problem because it's going to cause further infections. So he explained a number of options, and one of them was a resection of the prostate, and which I went for, and it basically removes part of the prostate to alleviate, if you like, or allow the urethra, which takes the urine from your bladder through that channel, that it doesn't close, which mine was closing, but the prostate was swelling around it, you know. So I went for that, and it was successful. I was 3 days in the Bon Secours in Galway, and I suppose on a kind of a comical note, you have a catheter in for 6 or 8 weeks. It's removed, you go to the toilet, and you're hoping that things will happen like they should. And when they do, I can tell you, you're a happy man, you know. So, you know, so I recovered, and my, you know, quality of life has increased significantly. I'm not in getting up 3 and 4 times a night, and getting up once a night. The flow is good, and but you know, what I'd say to everybody is, don't be going through the discomfort that I went through for so long. Get yourself checked. Cancer Care West, your GP, you know, there's various places you can go to. And, you know, I suppose my story is that I had issues with my prostate. They were solvable. And now, you know, I'd have to say, you know, I'm pleased with myself. Now, the worry of prostate cancer was always there, but thankfully, I had nothing sinister in my prostate, you know.
Brilliant, Joe.
I hope that explains as best I can. Yeah.
Absolutely, well said. Thank you. Thanks indeed, Joe. And just to reassure men a little bit further on again, like It's incredibly normal to have problems peeing once you get over the age of 50, sometimes before that. And there are ways and means to try to make that a little bit easier for yourself. Some men now I talk to, and I talk extensively with men around the country, it's just funny, you pick up little tips here and there. And a man told me not so long ago that he sits down now in the toilet at home to have a pee because it significantly reduces his worries of a smell in his trousers after going to the loo, or not emptying his bladder fully and having to shake and make a mess in the toilet or whatever. We shouldn't be shy about talking about these things. They're the most natural things in the world for us all. And that little tip I've passed on to so many people, and they come back to me now and they say, Jesus, it's made such a difference to my life. And, you know, little thing like that. And again, it comes about from talking about the topic, and sharing experiences might encourage, even if one man, we all said this here before we started this morning, if one man in this room goes and gets something done which might indeed save his life or make his life much better, then our day is worthwhile. But it's the quality of life issues that we want to stress today, just feeling better about your general contentment. And you will do if you're not worrying about why you have the pain in the stomach, or why you're getting up 6 or 7 times in the night, or why you're leaking, or all of those things that happen. Normally, they're all treatable, and normally, as I said, anybody who's diagnosed in time with prostate cancer will have a range of treatments and options available to them which they can take, and which will certainly make their lives better in many ways. And that leads us on then to Kevin, because Kevin's story is different to Joe's, in that, Kevin, you had a family history of prostate cancer. You feared you were going to get prostate cancer, and you did. And maybe you'll take it up from there, please.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I have a history of prostate cancer. My father passed away with prostate cancer. My brother actually got his prostate removed around the age I am now. Also, another thing too is I discovered that my mother had breast cancer, and my sister has recovered from breast cancer recently, and that can be in the family as well. So there's a link there. So I kind of got the sense that it was a trap to line winner that I was going to get prostate cancer. And I suppose I was waiting for it to happen. But one of the things that I did at the very, very beginning was to insist that I got a PSA test in my blood test every time. And I think this is very, very important. Some doctors, for some reason or other, don't include it on the blood test. Every one of us should be getting a PSA test, and in the blood test as well. I think that's very, very important. So 2 years ago, I was still kind of coming back from bowel cancer. I had bowel cancer, and I was lucky enough that it just one operation did the job. I didn't have to get any other follow-up. And I was brought into to my consultant, and he said that I had prostate cancer. I still have it. But one of the things he said to me, which was interesting, he said, Kevin, he says, something else is going to kill you other than this. And I was actually very, very relieved at that. But the thing is, I still kind of felt, okay, this is something I have to get sorted. And I did a lot of research into it. And it was at at an Irish Men's Sheds project about prostate cancer last year or the year before, that I learned about brachytherapy, that it wasn't necessary to get the prostate out. And I hope now actually to go for brachytherapy. I have to go back to the consultant on Wednesday, and we will be having a good conversation about what is going to happen in the new year. And I think that's one thing. But one thing I found about it was that the more I actually learned about it, the more I kind of felt a little bit more relieved about it. It's a worry, yes. I just want to get it before it gets me, I suppose. And there is always that fear in it. But also, I feel I'm in control of it now. I can actually do something about it. And so I'm glad now I'm not afraid of it. And I'm going to do something about it. So that is one of the things that, now I've gone for I've got the PSA, I've gotten MRI scans, I've got the biopsies and all the rest. And it was the biopsy that showed it up. It wasn't the MRI scan that showed it up, it was the biopsy that showed it up. Although we were chatting earlier and others said that it's the MRI that showed it up and not the biopsy. But I know I now have it and I can actually do something about it. And I look to the future, I look to a long life, a long future. I'm not going anywhere soon. And so I feel more confident now having been diagnosed, I think. And there's a great confidence in that as well. Okay.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know if that...
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, Kevin. And in Kevin's case, as he said, he found out as much as possible about his condition before making a choice. Sometimes you're in such a state of shock when you get a diagnosis of prostate cancer, you may have left a little bit too late, or you may just be so, you know, your world changes so much that sometimes it has been reported that men make rushed decisions without really finding out as much as possible about their condition, the extent of cancer, where it is, and what the Gleason scale we were talking about earlier in Kevin's case is relatively low. So he had time to consider his options and look at various treatments and make the decision that was right for him. So he managed his condition and is now the better for it and happier for having done so. That brings us on to our third speaker today, and you may have seen an excerpt on the Men's Shed television TG Cahar programme, which was a lovely piece which Martin was involved in a couple of weeks ago, where he spoke about his story of being diagnosed with cancer and the shock of having been diagnosed with cancer and the urgency that had to be addressed when that happened. So thanks very much for telling your story, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Hello, everybody. I was never as nervous in my whole life, but anyway. Oh yes, with all these fellas here. So anyway, 2021 was a very interesting year. Did you ever hear the saying they have in China? May you live in interesting times. 2021 was a very interesting year for me, and it was around February, around that time, and I used to be driving down to the local beach with the dog to bring him for a walk, and I said I'll have to switch off the heated seat, you know, because it was burning hot, like, and the heated seat wasn't on at all, like. And I said, oh, there's something very strange about this. So I went to the GP, and I was diagnosed with prostatitis. If anyone here ever had it, it's a very, very uncomfortable condition. It's just an infection of the prostate. So I went to the urologist then, and he said to me, well, I'll put you on a couple of months of antibiotics, and it improved it a little bit. And he said, well, you know, come back to me in a few months' time, he said. So I went back to the urologist then, and he said, it's not 100%. So the GP then decided to send me for an MRI. And I went in June, I think it was, 2021, and it was an MRI at midnight. It's a very strange experience. I didn't care what time of day it was. There was no traffic, you know, in Galway. Can you imagine that? It took me 3 days to come here, you know, to be here today. But anyway, so the GP rang me the following day around 10 or 12 o'clock, around that time, and he says, well, you had an MRI last night, he says, and I said, yeah. And I have a funny feeling that's not a great thing, I says, to get a phone call this quickly after. And he said, no. He's very blunt, like, and there was no sugarcoating. There's no sugarcoating it anyway. So I said, there's an area of interest, he said. And is that another name, I says, for a tumour? And he says, yeah. Oh, thanks. And then I had to go into the classroom after hearing this, like, and there was 32 kids inside in the classroom, and carried on, and it was okay. I didn't think I was an actor, but I managed to last a few hours to get home, and then I was sent in for what do you call it? Take the samples.
Biopsy.
Biopsy. Yeah. Sorry, no, Irish is my first language, and find it very hard to think of everything. But anyway, I was supposed to get a biopsy then in 26th of August, but my father died the day before. He was in the regional, he caught the COVID in the ward in the regional, and I visited him the week before, and I caught the COVID myself as well. So August was a very interesting month. So that was postponed till September, till the COVID cleared, and I had a biopsy then. And on the 3rd of October, I was told by the urologist that the biopsy results were positive, that they take about 30 samples, and it was in 10 of them. And I didn't know the urologist would know straight away. He said in the morning that, oh, you're grand. He says, there's nothing in it. It's only kind of a scar tissue from the prostatitis. He says, there's nothing there. But while I was leaving the hospital at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., he put his arm around me. He says, are you be okay? He said. And I said, that doesn't sound great. He knew by the color of the samples while he was taking them. It was in 10 out of the 30. So, and then the big meeting then, he told me to come back in a few weeks' time. And then, so he said, you have two options. He said, an operation, a radical prostatectomy, where they take out the prostatectomy completely, and the surrounding organs as well, or the nerves and nerves as well. Yeah. So, and I said, is there any other option? And the boys had options, and I was hearing about other people having uranium pellets inserted to keep the cells in check, and other people took hormone tablets to keep the testosterone levels down, because it thrives on testosterone, the disease. So I said, what about those options? I said, I could take any other option. He says, there's no option, he says, except the radical prostatectomy, or just to leave it. And I said, that's not a great option, is it? I'll take option A, please, Bob. But anyway, so the operation was to be 2 weeks before Christmas 2021. Every month had something special for me. But anyway, couldn't go ahead with the operation. The night before the operation, the heart was racing, and then it was cancelled, and I was told to go home and come back 2 days before Christmas to get a really fancy procedure called a cardioversion. That's when they stop your heart and they start it up again with the pads. But I didn't mind that. I don't like, they had to shave your chest. That's what I hated. So anyway, they started it up and they got it into the right rhythm again. So the 24th, I'm nearly finished now. 24th of February then, I had the operation. And when I woke up, everybody was talking about the war. And I said, what war? And I said, have I been in a coma for months or something? Because I didn't hear about any war, because when I was being wheeled down to the operating theatre, the war in Ukraine started, and I woke up hearing everybody, nurses, doctors, everybody talking about the war. And I also found out my aunt and her husband had split up. And I said, it must be 3-4 months in a coma, I said. Everything happened that day. But anyway, they removed the prostate, and I've been very well since. They don't really prepare you as well as, it's very hard to take in everything that you hear. And of course, there's all these issues afterwards with leakage and what do you call it, incontinence, is it?
Yes.
I thought that only happened in Europe. Over on the continent, sorry. That's a poor joke, sorry.
I'll give it to you.
And then there's the other one. There's two more, sorry. The elephant in the room, erectile dysfunction. Nobody talks about that because that's the elephant in the room. So it's a reality. In most cases, it happens. And the third one was, when people talked to me and they were talking about, oh, you're sick, I heard you were sick, you had cancer, and it's only prostate cancer, all right. Oh, so, because there's a snobbery about cancer, would you believe it? I think pancreatic is at the top, I think, and it goes down there, and prostate cancer is down here. It's in the little leagues. Seemingly, nobody dies from prostate cancer, which is not true, as we heard from Kevin here. And so I used to get really annoyed when I heard that. And I used to say, well, one fella said to me, he says, oh, that's the cancer to get if you're going to get cancer. And I said, I'm so blessed, I said. Geez, I'm delighted. I'm so happy now. And geez, I'm the lucky one. It's like winning the lotto. And but anyway, to finish off, going back to the elephant, the guy next to me in the room, he had the operation the day after me. And he said, the following day, he was going home, and he says, geez, he says, you won't believe what the consultant did. He says, he's after giving me a prescription, he says, for Viagra. And he says, it's the second last thing on my mind, he says, with a catheter and 5 holes in the stomach where they take it out with the Da Vinci robot, a special robot. He says, the last thing in the world, he says, that I'm thinking about now, he says, is, you know what, sexual intercourse. People are so afraid to say it. But anyway, and it was for circulation. It wasn't for what he thought. But I was on Google before that, and I knew full well it was a treatment. So I told him not to take it till he got home. And I said, don't look at me, whatever you do. So that's one of the things, really. We can laugh about it, it's great. I can talk about anything, the lads the same way. We can talk about these things, but we need to talk about them. And it's the elephant in the room. People don't like to talk about it, but I love to talk about it. It's great crack. But so I hopefully there'll be a screening, something like the breast check screening program. We need some sort of system or to screen, and men don't like to go for this digital exam. I thought it was something you did on a computer, but when the GP put on his glove, I knew what he meant. So with that, thank you very much.
Fair play to Martin. And thank you very much. And with most things, as we know, when we laugh and we make light of things a little bit, it's easier to get around those unmentionables. Yeah, we're called the unmentionables, and unfortunately, that is the reality of life. That sexual function and urinary control will be normally affected after a cancer treatment for prostate cancer, but there are things you can get and devices and medicines and so forth that help. But the important thing, I know we were talking about earlier, Martin, is to find out about those things. You were aware of an oncology unit in Galway, you found out about it without being referred to it, which deals specifically with sexual or penile rehabilitation. And it is important, and it is the elephant in the room, and no matter what age you are or what your circumstances are, you're entitled to have a sex life if you want to have a sex life. And you should never think that the diagnosis of cancer or the things your doctor's telling you to save your life, if you like, trumps everything else. Of course you want to save your life, but you also want to have a quality of life after diagnosis and after treatment. So never be ashamed or afraid to talk about that to your consultant, to your doctor, to your carer, to your partner. And I want to bring in the partner here before we close, and maybe ask one of the lads maybe to help me here, because your partner and your close family members will be impacted by a prostate cancer diagnosis. If it's incontinence or if it's with your partner and your intimate life with your partner, they will be also affected. But don't think that that's the end of it all if you can't have penetrative sex. There are so many other ways, if you are brave enough or able enough to talk to your partner about, of enjoying intimate moments with your partner, kissing and cuddling and doing maybe things that are a little bit outside the box. But maybe that was a bad use of words, excuse me.
Explain.
Maybe that was bang on actually, but well, so I'll pass it back. Kevin, go for it. Sorry, Kevin. But you know what I meant.
Yeah, that's true, but I must ask him what these methods are later on. I'll talk to him in private. But that's very, very true. It's very, very important actually how your partner and your family actually are impacted by it as well. But I think it's also very, very important, and Michael Harding talked about it this morning, is talking to your family and talking about it as well. I think it's very, very important. And also, I think it's very, very important that we talk about this. I think if we're to bring anything away, is actually to talk about this, because this is something that we were asking in the earlier about how many people in the room here could have the possibility of getting prostate cancer. And there's probably about 20 or 30 of us in the room that may actually get prostate cancer. But that's not to frighten you. That is to just make you aware that there's a possibility that it's there. And to also, to be informed about it. And I think also the PSA in the blood test, I think, is so very, very important. That every time we go for a blood test, that we get the doctor to include the PSA. Some doctors don't include it, but it should be included in that. And if the PSA is rising, then it's something to look at. Okay. Also, I think we need to look at our own family as well. Find out what the family history is, because if the family history, if there's prostate cancer in the family, somewhere in the generations, then that kind of increases the risk of you contracting prostate cancer. But I think that's very, very important. But talk about it, and I think, like, if you like, we will be about after this. If you want to come and chat with us, I don't want anyone to think, oh, if I'm going to be talking to that guy, I'm going to be talking about prostate cancer. But come and talk to us about it afterwards if you want to. If you want to chat about it. Okay?
Thanks, Kevin. Well done. I think time is against us, but we got through a lot there today, and it's because of the honesty of the three guys to talk and to stand up, to sit there in front of you all and tell their stories. It means an awful lot. So our very own Brolly, O'Rourke and Spillane, give them a big round of applause, please. And sorry, just one other thing. Clem Fallon from the Irish Cancer Society has a stand over there. But I also noticed that there's stands on mental health and just general welfare and men's aid and so on. Lots of services there, lads, that you really should talk to and get brochures and engage with, because talking is everything. Engagement with other men and with dedicated cancer support services or men's sheds and similar organisations. talk, share experiences, make it easier to talk and make it easier for other people to talk as well, and you're saving lives. And thank you very much for your attention today. Thank you.
Martin, thank you very much indeed. Martin Sweeney, ladies and gentlemen, and his panel here. I can tell you for a fact, Martin, these three lads here beside me, much easier to deal with than Brawley, Splann and O'Rourke over the years. There's no question about that. I was smiling to myself, Martin, when you were talking about the fact that when you were in hospital, that they stopped your heart to put it back into rhythm again. Yeah. In my case, my heart stopped all by itself and they had to restart it to put it back into rhythm. So we had a different experience of more or less the same kind of thing. But well done, guys, and thank you very much indeed. Now, my friends, we've almost come to the end of our session, but we have one last speaker who essentially is going to close our seminar, if you like. And we would ask you please to welcome, stop breaking things. We would ask you please, would you welcome Eamon O'Connor from the IMSA, of course, and chair of, and Eamon, in fact, is from Rostrevor in County Down, is that right? He is indeed. And, come on. Eamon is going to give you his closing reflections. Thank you.
Thank you. My role here today is just basically to summarise what we've done today and what we've gone through and what we've got out of it. And I know we're going to thank lots of people. I think one person that definitely needs a big thanks is for Michael, for coming down. Yeah. I've been at previous events where Michael's been a presenter and he always does an excellent job, and we all of course know him from TV, but he just is such a good communicator, makes life a lot easier, very nice and easy, and particularly the fact that he came down with one crutch is even very, very good of him to do that, you know. I've been in Virginia before. My own shed in Rostrevor and Virginia have had a connection for a number of years. It all sort of stopped with COVID, but we came down to visit here a few times, and I've always been very impressed with it. And they've also come to Rostrevor, and you know, they're welcome back again now that we can all start moving again. And if anybody else is up around the Mourns, please drop into Rostrevor Main Shed while you're about. Just to summarise today, I think the day started off extremely well with Heather Humphreys. It was very good of her to come here, but it was also even better of her to announce that she was giving us €1 million. You know, so and that's an increase on last year where it was 800,000, and this year, and it was 2,000 per shed. But now she's talking about 3,000 per shed, and we were extremely pleased last year with the scheme because there was actually 90% of the sheds took that money. Now, we didn't give out everything, but 90% of sheds that we knew of applied for the money. And that is a phenomenal result. We never thought it would be that high. But it shows that there still are the people out there, and the people need the money. That money makes a big difference. And obviously with the inflation, particularly in the last year, that extra €1,000 makes a big difference. Just to keep the doors open. So again, just once again, I know she's long gone. She's probably had another 10 engagements since she left here. But I mean, it was phenomenal. And it's a really big thanks to the government for the support that they gave us. It's just, you know, I think she deserves another round of applause. And of course, Enda then spoke about the benefits of main sheds to everyone, and I don't need to go over that again, what Enda's done. Enda has been with us just over about 2.5 years, about Enda. And he's done a really, really good job, particularly the aspect with the due to the funding. You know, that has been a big initiative that Enda has done. And of course, but we've also employed a lot more extra staff that are doing things. Particularly, I'm really happy with a lot of you have and being involved in the Sheds for Life, and that's a big thing. And you know, thanks to Rebecca for all the work that she's done with that. You know, and again, Rebecca, Eva, and Ben, and James, is it? Who's new to this, they've all been involved in getting this event going today. And I think the program has been fantastic. I really do. I think you all agree. It's been a great program. It's just... It's extremely hard to put on a good program, you know, but there's so much work in getting that balance in it of the things that are interesting. And I think everybody, the fact that, you know, everybody's still sitting here is a testimony to how good it's been. Michael Harding was just, he was fantastic, wasn't he? He just got that thing. I think when the three lads were up here talking earlier on, I said, I was thinking, are they from Cavan? Because they did such a good job, you know. But just that whole thing where the benefit of talking, just the benefit, and we've all got that. And it's the thing that we all know that. We all get that because we get it from our own sheds. Because most of the guys in my shed, we have a big shed, we've about 30 active members, and they're all friends. They weren't friends when the shed started, but they're friends now. And they're good friends. Like we're having our Christmas dinner in a couple of weeks, and there's 30 guys going to it, you know, all from the shed. So that's, I'm bad in the first round, guys. There's a few guys, there's several guys here as well. So they're doing it. And then I enjoyed David Mulligan's talk. Very interesting about what's going on, the benefit that the shed brings to the people in the prison, and what it does for them, and what it even for them to reintegrate into society. But it's also that when you're in a situation like that, just to feel that you've got something to look forward to. When you get up in the morning, you have something to look forward to. You know, I could just imagine how terrible it must be just be sitting in a cell and have nothing else to do, and just to have that to go down and do that and feel that you're doing something that brings you benefit. And it's something that we all understand the benefit of the shed, but it's good to see that it's going on. And I would really like at some point to get a chance to come down and visit your facility and talk them in the place. I think that's something, and I'm going to tell Enda he has to come with me, by the way. But I think that's something I would like to see, and it's something I'd like to see expanded even more into all the prisons, you know. And it's good to see that, as you said, in Australia, where the first main shed started, that they're interested in what it's sort of like bringing it all back home, you know, isn't it? So that connection. Carol Power, who did their video presentation, my own shed participated in that survey and stuff and we actually were one of the sheds that did the online survey, and was very beneficial. But think of it even for the benefits of bring yourselves. We have recently made, the Sheds for Life program is funded by the HSC. So as you probably are aware, Rostrevor is in the north of Ireland. So we can't get funding from the HSC, which of course is fine. But what we've done recently is we applied for our own funding from the health board in the north to put on a Sheds for Life program. And one of the things that we did with the accompanying documents was that report. That report that they put in, which showed the benefits of sheds and the benefits of the Sheds for Life program, what that brings. And when you're making funding applications, throw something like that in with it. It's available online. You can download the document, but you're mostly now, when you're doing applications, you're doing them online. But you can download all of that documentation and just put that as an addition on the email or in your application and send that on with it. Have a read through it and look at the benefits. But it's a great document to see, because it's an academic document. These are people that have done the research and have come up with something, and stick that in with your application. You know, it's a very powerful document to have. Then when we got on to, and of course it leads on to with Kate Chandler and Karen Moore, where they're talking about biodiversity and the funding of that. In particular, I like the fact that whenever Kate, I'm getting the two names now, or Karen was talking about the funding, that it's 100% funding. That's music to our ears. We all know that. You know, it's so hard to come up with money, but if you can get 100% funding, that is such a great thing. And also that there's somebody there to help you with the application. That's the two big things that we need. So, you know, and also in our presentation now, you could see all of the documentation, but see all of the things that there's lots of good ideas. So, you know, go on, you know, people can go on, look that stuff up, find out about it, and think of projects to do that. And please do apply. I think that was something very exciting to me to see that was available. And and also that about the pollinators, again, another good idea. And go on to that whenever you were showing your website. There's a lot of good information. We do something in my own shed on that. We have bee boxes and stuff like that, but there's lots of good ideas. So while it's fresh in your mind, this afternoon or tomorrow or something like that, go and look at that stuff and see what benefit is it you can bring to things. I enjoyed the fun of the exercise. It was great, wasn't it? Just to get us going again. So you all have to do that every day now for the rest of the year. So get yourselves ready for Christmas. So you make space available for that turkey and ham and Christmas pudding. But that was fun, and do that. Just get yourselves moving. It was nice. It's a nice wee break just before the final section. And I must admit, the last section on the unmentionables I really couldn't get over the honesty of the men that to talk about those sort of things. It's just, and that's what it is. Talk about what's going on. It's important, and even we even laughed. Michael Harding got it perfectly. The person who had the worst experience was the one that got the most laughs. And that's what men are like. We do have to talk. We have to get into that and do that. I know my own father. The another thing is my own father died at 69 of a heart attack. And if there had been a man's shed around, he wouldn't have passed away at that, because he retired and he just sat and watched TV. And he was a smart man. He was very good with his hands, and his job involved working with his hands. But he just sat down and just watched TV and smoked cigarettes and had a sandwich and a cup of tea and things like that. And I turned 69 recently, and I still think of myself as a young man. There's nothing wrong with going to the doctor with your worry. I have 8 brothers, and 3 of my younger brothers have all had heart problems in their 50s. And my brother Kevin, I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning him, about 6 weeks ago, he went and he's 10 years and a day younger than me. So he had just turned 59 the day after I turned 69. And he went to the doctor a week later, and the day after, he lives in the United States, the day after he went in for a quadruple bypass. And only he had happened to go to the doctor for a normal checkup to do with his insurance. He went in, how his heart was still beating, I don't know. So the first thing I did, as soon as I heard that that happened to him, I phoned my doctor and I said, I want to check. And he says, what, is there anything wrong with me? No, I have no heart problems, nothing. But I'm 69, my dad died at 69, 3 of my brothers had heart problems in their 50s, I want to check. So I got a check. It took a week to get it, which is not that long. But, do that. He said, why? I said, because I'm entitled to it. Don't take no for an answer. Don't let the doctor, they try to put you off, but don't let them put you off. You have a reason, you have a worry. Worry's one of the stress is one of the things that, will make you have a heart attack. So, you've got to take away that worry. So just go in and ask. And as you said, all the guys you had, talk about all those issues, So anyway, guys, thanks for coming today. I really appreciate you all being here. It's great to see such a great crowd. It's great to get back together again. We haven't been back physically since 2018 in Cork. Although funny enough, when we were talking about you were talking about the pollinators earlier on, there was a bunch of us were in, how many people here were in Killarney? Which was a phenomenal experience. And one of the things that we were doing in Killarney was, as you said, one of the problems with the rhododendrons, they're not pollinators. They're not a native flower. They're no good to anything. So apart from the fact that they're killing everything off, they're no good for the birds. They're no good for and they're no good for the bees. They're not even good for the deer. Don't even eat them. But that was a great experience for me to be down there with that group of men only 2 weeks ago, and then here we are back, a big bunch of us back together again. And it's great to get together with all the guys, because first and foremost, I'm a shedder. I'm just a guy from Reservoir Shed. I happen to be the chairman of the Irish Men's Shed Association, but I'm a shedder. That's what it is. And I just love being here with all you guys. So if anybody about over the next hour or two, you want to have a chat, come over and have a chat. But we're not going to talk about high things, we're just talk about what you do in your shed. Okay? Anyway, guys, thanks for today.
Eamon, thank you very much indeed for those strong words. And can I say, isn't Eamon a very fit-looking 69-year-old? Huh? I was 69 myself, my last birthday, by the way. Actually, I'm going to have to own up, Eamon. I'm nearly a year ahead of you. I'll be 70 after Christmas. Okay, we're almost done, folks, but Enda wants to say a few quick words to you before we close on this particular section. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, everybody. Just two things left to do. The last little piece is my shed, what it means to me. So we will be aware, I suppose, that coming into 2024, we're probably going into an election year, and we're going into certainly local and European elections, probably going to be followed up by a general election sometime September, October, along there of next year. Down the back, you will see everyone is facing this way, but on the very back wall, there is three kind of sheds. There's a couple of guys doing theatrics down there. That's what I'm laughing at. So down there, there's these three white things that are meant to look like sheds. Okay. And what I want people to do is to walk down there when we're finished up and just write on that shed. There is markers supplied in buckets what your shed means to you. And we're going to take those captions and we're going to use them in pre-election material, because as we roll into an election, as everybody knows, it is an opportunity, I suppose, to influence policy at a national level. It's an opportunity for us to try and get issues to do with men's sheds into the programme for government. The most important thing within that is to emphasise how important men's sheds are just to us, to men ourselves. So we just want people to write on that there, and then when we do pre-budget submission stuff, so when we do pre-election manifestos and so forth, you will see your captions on those. So that's really what we're going to ask people to do, is just walk down there, grab a marker and write on that what the shed means to you. It could be anything from, it means the world, it's a pot of gold, you know, get away from the wife, whatever it is, doesn't matter. You know, that's what that is for. So there's three of those along there, and we hope that you would utilise that. And the very last thing is that Ned is here to just present a pen to Michael, to thank Michael for coming along today and to you know, support us and to, you know, add to the atmosphere of the whole event. Once that's over, the food is that way, the stands are that way, and the music is somewhere in between. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As a member of Virginia Men's Shed, I want to, first of all, welcome you all here to Virginia today. I think that the work that has gone on here is a credit to all the men's sheds that are down there. I think that the men's shed has grown since we started here in Virginia a few years ago, to see the number of people who are here today and what they have done in the presentation that Enda has said down there as well. I would just like to make a small presentation to Michael here. It's his first time, as I'm aware, of meeting Michael personally. We have seen him often enough at night there when he used to present the programme at night. So on your first visit to...
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much.
So, just on before I finish, I would just like to thank everybody, particularly the members of our own men's shed here, who put in such an effort into it Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And it's great that we have that kind of a cooperation and everything else here. And just in relation to the building here, this is it's a building that was put up with the cooperation of everybody in the area, particularly Virginia Show Society and Virginia Show Centre Committee. They are the people who put this building here. It's a community building. That's what it's there for to host things like this, conferences, anything else like that this year. just wearing my other cap on this left-hand side, I would just like to apologise to you for the state of the grounds out there. Some of you may have got your shoes dirty coming in, but I will guarantee you that the next time round it'll be all tarmacked. It's a work in progress, and we had hoped to have it finished for today, but due to weather conditions and everything else, we just didn't get it finished. So please God, if you're coming back again, you won't need to wear only good shoes, because they won't be getting dirty. It'll be all tarmac for you. So once again, thank you very much for coming. And one thing I would say, safe home, safe journey, no matter where you came from, whether it's near or far, safe journey home, and the best of luck. We look forward to meeting you again in the not too distant future. Thank you very much.
So sorry, just back again. So the music is going to be supplied by Rams in Rhythm from Newcastle and Dublin, and they're coming up to the stage now to get going. Great stuff. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Hold on.